Good morning. I had a privilege about 4 or so years ago to be invited to this forum. I'm glad to say, as a pensioner in good standing at Tsuhosan, I'm glad that you've decided to come here. When I last attended your event, you were elsewhere down the road. But thank you very much. The Minister of Finance is on his way. I see Minister Kubai Ngubane. Good morning, Minister. I've been asked to talk about a number of issues in this chairman's report. Good morning. But I thought maybe to start, one should just say, what is the problem statement? What is this X that we're trying to solve for? I think our the problem statement is our low growth or no growth in the economy. And that manifests with lack of investment, lack of jobs, which exposes and magnify our skills problem. So, this is how I've interpreted what the problem statement is. So, I thank the organizers for inviting me to engage in with this highly esteemed audience this morning. Mine really is to share very broadly my thoughts about some of the critical issues facing our country. Knowing that you will be delving more into more detailed reflections in the panel discussions that will follow later on. While I'm at it, I'm also going to use this platform to unashamedly implore every member of this audience to spend time today thinking very, very clearly and deeply about what you, as an individual and a leader, what is it that you can do to help drive economic growth, job creation, and transformation in our country, starting right now. To me, this is a critical reflection for all of us as business leaders, because whilst it's excellent that President Ramaphosa's administration has been taking concrete steps to try to tackle the scourge of corruption, reinstate accountability, and restore business and consumer confidence, the task is formidable and enormous. And so, it can't be realistic nor responsible for us to expect government to do this alone. I think it's safe to assume that everyone in this audience recognizes that the diverse businesses and organizations we all represent here cannot operate in isolation from the social challenges that beset our country. It is therefore a duty of all of us to look at what we can do to create a fairer, more equitable society in which people have the opportunity and tools to improve their economic circumstances. One of the most important ways we can act is by contributing to skills development. In fact, effective action in this area is very squarely in our own interest, in that a higher proportion of adult population in training or in employment translate into a more skilled and productive workforce, a greater social stability, and a larger consumer market for our goods and services. Even outside of our own selfish interests as business, it's a well understood phenomena that more equitable societies with a strong middle class do better in the long run on almost every measure of economic human development. In contrast, a situation in which a whole half of the young people in this country have no hope of obtaining a viable job is a powder keg waiting to explode. And populist politicians will not hesitate to light up this fuse as we have seen. So if we all agree that stability is key to attracting investment and stimulating growth, then I would strongly urge you all to do whatever you can to improve their chances of getting a job. Put differently, when it comes to providing bursaries and scholarships, learnerships and employee training programs, we don't think of it as a grudge cost. Don't relegate it to a corner on the CSI budget. Think of it as a down payment, advance payment on a better, more stable future, and as such, one of the best investments you can hope to make. In fact, make it a core part of your business model. We will be hearing a little more from Tash Ismail Saville later during the panel discussion, so I'll leave it to her to encourage you to get involved in the YES program. For now, I'll simply say it is an excellent example of what can be achieved when government and business do work together on a shared objective of tackling our extremely high levels of youth unemployment. And I sincerely hope we are going to see good take-up from you as business. Now, Minister Kubai, I physically left Tsogosan on my own 5 or 6 years ago, before I'm physically removed for Escom. I haven't been at Escom for long, so I won't pretend to take any credit for the various skills transfer programs that we operate at Escom. Instead, I briefly mentioned the Escom Intrapreneurial Incubator program, which was launched in February this year in partnership with Small Enterprise Development Agency, the Black Management Forum, and the Youth Chamber of Commerce and Industry, South Africa, Free State. The incubator will provide young startup entrepreneurs with the resource they need to grow their businesses, including practical business skills training, access to mentors and coaches, and opportunities to network and collaborate with fellow entrepreneurs alongside office space, internet, and printing facilities. Importantly, it will also provide training to capable entrepreneurs to access relevant tender opportunities, and we will be working together to look at opportunities to open up supply chains for these entrepreneurs. It's not rocket science, but it does take a considerable amount of time, effort, and commitment to make initiatives of this sort sustainable and successful. Corporate social investment does of course have its place, especially when it comes to schools level intervention. The Escom Development Foundation, for example, has partnered with the Education Enterprise Trust to create the Youth Enterprise Society Initiative. The program runs in conjunction with the foundation on its annual school entrepreneur competition, which recognizes secondary schools that are exemplary in entrepreneurship education. Our objective here is to empower young people to become entrepreneurs of tomorrow, providing them with the access to tools and knowledge and exposing them to the opportunities. There are also opportunities for business, government, and academia to work together to ensure the country's universities and colleges are equipped to provide the kind of training that will actually be useful in the working world. For instance, there's so much hype about the fourth industrial revolution, but there's not nearly enough collaboration among us social partners to really interrogate what needs to be done to prepare our people, the current and the future workforce, to compete in a digital landscape. And there's a great deal of engagement that needs to take place between business, government, and trade unions about the future of our workforce outside of the knowledge economy. It is profoundly problematic to have coal workers marching to halt renewable energy projects, or my almas, the taxi industry, attacking Uber and Taxify drivers. As more and more routine jobs become redundant, replaced by artificial intelligence, we may well have former admin clerks and call center employees marching on head office. We haven't done nearly enough thinking about what this will mean for employment in our country. It's high time that government, business, and organized labor engage in a practical, cool-headed dialogue on this issue. Of course, we can't begin to solve unemployment in the absence of economic growth, even if we had the best skills development programs in the world. While growth prospects have somewhat improved since last year, our economy is not growing anywhere near fast enough to make significant dent in our unemployment rates. You've heard the deputy CEO of our sponsor here give you statistics on this issue. Our current focus for growth are far off the 3 to 5% growth of our GDP that we need. Our public debt is projected to be 56% of GDP by 2023, from 26% in 2009. Without a sustained pickup in economic growth, government will find it increasingly difficult to meet its fiscal projection and will continue to face the risk of a further credit rating downgrades. Government, business, and labor have been quietly working together on practical solutions to create jobs for a number of years. It's not plain sailing, but we are making progress. One example is the SA SME Fund, which is headed by Adrian Gore, that was launched in May 2016. The fund currently has got about 50 shareholders from the listed private companies across various industries, including the ITC, who have committed 1.5 billion rand. It invests in fund managers already investing in the SME space, with profitability and sustainable employment growth as core elements of their investment thesis. It also aims to stimulate the small and medium enterprise ecosystem in a number of ways, including the provision of business development for SMEs, building capacity by supporting improved access to market, and helping them manage working capital constraints arising from late payments. We hope to grow the fund by convincing other investors to come on board, including government and institutional investors such as the state-owned enterprises and pension funds. More broadly, South Africa's financial sector is looking at ways to play a bigger role in funding small and medium enterprises at affordable rates within appropriate risk appetites. One of the major banks, for example, has established a pool of funding for SME development, which it uses as a forum of collateral to extend loans to small business that don't have access to collateral of their own and would ordinarily qualify for funding. As compliment to this bank, Mark, it was in the late 80s when we could not find funding for taxis. All we had were our old Chevrolets and Valiants. We couldn't afford the new taxi, minibus taxis. We built the SAPTA Foundation, which pulled together all our deposits and became one for all and all for one. So another has created a procurement portal, a virtual marketplace bringing emerging SMEs together with corporate procurement teams looking for particular goods and services. The broad-based economic empowerment codes have successfully pushed business to develop programs and initiatives to support the development of aspiring entrepreneurs and existing small businesses. These range from mentoring and coaching to inclusion in supply chains, marketing opportunities, and the like. Effectiveness varies, of course, but across sectors, there's a potentially deep well of knowledge and experience around what works well and what doesn't. So I'd like to see business and government partnering to draw out these lessons for broader application and collaboration to a scale that can be increased for success. I make all these examples relating to investments in skills development and small business development not to brag about what some of the organizations I'm involved in are doing, but to impress upon all of you my belief that these are key if we are to achieve inclusive growth and consequently create much needed jobs. These are just some of the low-hanging fruits that I am hoping we as business leaders can deeply reflect on today in answering the big question, what should business be doing to help solve the economic challenges that our country faces? I'm not here to talk about state capture or the political landscape, but I do need to make a point that encouraging business and investor confidence on the scale needed to revive economic growth is going to require a great deal of work to restore the rule of law and rebuild a clean, capable, and delivery-focused government. At the moment, despite all the good work led by President Ramaphosa, we have still a very long way to go. At provincial level, there are complex, messy power struggles taking place as the ruling party tries to balance the interests of different factions, while the anger of an underserved populace continues to boil over. Then there's a report by the Auditor General that was released last month, which shows the shocking scale of maladministration and corruption taking place in our municipalities. There are no quick fixes to these problems. Corruption is part of it, of course, and efforts are underway to begin to tackle this, including the special investigation units that are investigating at various levels of government. Treasury has also undertaken to increase collaboration with law enforcement agencies to strengthen efforts to fight fraud, corruption, and abuse of supply chain management systems across all spheres of government, and to restore integrity in the system. Efforts to rebuild the strength and independence of our crucial institutions such as the National Prosecution Authority, SARS, the Public Protector have begun, but we are just at the beginning and will need ongoing vigilance from business, civil society, and the media. On the same note, every business operating in South Africa needs to keep a continuous critical watch on its own governance and management practices, to be constantly alert to the need not to just comply with the minimum standards, but to work towards exemplifying the integrity, transparency, and accountability that we as South Africans expect from the business sector. We can't continue to point fingers at others if we haven't gotten our own house in order. Lack of capacity is, in some ways, a much harder challenge to address, particularly given the huge scale of the problem as evidenced by the Auditor General's report. Again, I urge business and government to look at how they can work together to come up with practical, pragmatic solutions that start to tackle this. And I'll reiterate my point earlier about education and skills development as the #1 investment of any of us can make in our country's future. Turning to the state-owned enterprises, government is already making very positive strides in terms of reforming and strengthening. Urgent action have been implemented to improve the fiscal position of the largest of SOEs, including Escom, and Minister Gordon recently announced the critical changes in respect of the board and executive appointments across a range of entities. There's a huge opportunity here to make really dramatic changes in terms of efficiency and accountability. And indeed, when we say tumamina, we ourselves as business people must be prepared to raise our hands, to come and offer whatever skills that we can to these state-owned enterprises. And I am very encouraged by government's apparent openness to working with the private sector as joint investors to get these crucial institutions back on track. Business and government has in fact been looking in some detailed options for stronger private sector participation in the state-owned enterprises governance and operations for a few years now under the CEO initiative. We've had some ups and downs in terms of the effectiveness of engagement, but I'm confident we'll start to see some of these extensively considered and debated ideas finally coming to fruition soon. Another crucial area where we look to government to take a lead is the need for policy certainty. I think we should stop talking about trust between government and business. That will continue to develop as we go. But the issue of policy certainty, listening to Sipho Masego at Telkom the other day, he was giving an example of a problem situation that he finds Telkom in. We've got to buy fiber. There's a company outside Brits that manufactures this cable. It employs 600 people. Buying from that company does not give us any BEE credits. There's a lady who's African who imports cables from China, who employs no one. If we bought our fiber from this lady, we'll get the maximum BEE points. This is particularly urgent in relation to land redistribution and the manner in which the expropriation without compensation will be implemented. The appropriate energy mix for the country in terms of renewables versus fossil, and whether nuclear is still on the table. We're waiting to hear from the Minister of Energy on the next integrated resource plan. Policies and regulations that impact on our beleaguered mining sector. These issues have a huge impact on investor confidence and all have the potential to create rifts between the social partners if not appropriately addressed. So how can we help solve this challenge? As I draw to a close, we have the great privilege of living in a participative democracy. I therefore strongly urge business to participate constructively, energetically in these policy debates, to commit resources to understanding the potential costs, benefits, and unintended consequences, to engage with the relevant stakeholders in government, parliament, industry, and society to come up with workable solutions. The C initiative continues to work to identify, to promote and accelerate structural reforms. Speaking with that head on for a moment, I'm confident that we'll be forging further partnerships with government to address these issues in the coming months. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa demands a lot of us. She demands our time. She demands our energy and our resources to work together as social partners to make her a prosperous and inclusive society. She deserves that. Sometimes we feel rather put upon. All this time, all this money, all this effort spent to try and make our society work. But we're not unique, not by any long shot. Around the world, business sector is under unprecedented pressure to demonstrate its value to the society in which it operates. As I said at the start, We cannot pretend to exist outside our social context. We cannot pretend that if we provide regular returns to our shareholders and create a decent number of jobs, we'll be all right. Our customers, our stakeholders, and all our regulators expect, demand much more. Our license to operate depends on this. In fact, it's quite possible that the survival of the market economy, market capitalism as we know it, depends on this very point. So let's start looking at the creation of a social value as a core of business objective, and let's do all we can to work together with one another to get our economy and our society, and by implication, our own organizations, on a sustainable trajectory. I wish you all success. Please give South Africa the solutions it requires of you. You paid a lot for it. Thank you very much.